Okay, here is a big honking problem. It looks really scary, but after things cancel, it gets down to be something fairly small. I want you to do, there's going to be 5 points for it. 1 point is to graph it. Once it's done, you'll have a resulting function, y equals something a lot simpler than what you see right now. Then that's the parent graphed except shifted somewhere. So you just make a sketch, like maybe your answer's like this or something. Okay, it's something like that. It's not it, but all right. So make me a graph, number 1. Number 2, I'd like you to write the domain. Quiet, please. Number 3, sorry. I'd like you to write me the vertical asymptotes because they come from the domain. Number 4, I'd like you to write the horizontals, and Bob will tell you about the horizontal asymptotes, unless it's not a Bob, in which case it's a sob or a bot. All right, and then the last area is holes. And sometimes there's more than one hole, sometimes there's only one, sometimes there's no holes. But remember on your graph to include the holes on your graph, or you're going to lose half point. If you forget 2 holes, you lose a whole point. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a minute while you try to get those 5 points. I hope you can all get 5 out of 5 on this. It's definitely doable. Okay, I'm back on the recording now. Just so you know, we exchanged papers here basically to see how people did when grading these things. X plus 6, x minus 6 is what you get when you factor that guy. Then the x plus 6 cancels that, x minus 6 cancels that. All you're left with is a 1 on the top, 1 over x plus 7. Now that does not have to be, it's not any of the 1 through 5, but it's very smart to write it out. Now the graph is, the parent graph kind of looks like this, so we just have to take that except move it which way? Left or right? Left 7. So basically it looks like that. How far is 7? Depends on their graph, but it has to be moved 7 to the left. Okay, if that's wrong, just put -1. Number 2, domain. The professional way to do it is to say x is an element of the real numbers, but they don't have to have the xe there. It's awesome if they do, but they have to have the big R. X cannot be -6, x cannot be 6, and x cannot be 7. Now some people will leave one off. No, they don't get credit. They have to have all 3. Yes? Thank you, -7. You're right. Now I will say if they only forgot a negative like that, then everything else was perfect, give them half off. If everything was perfect except a negative. Yes? It has asymptotes in the real world. I'm not going to grade that it has asymptotes. It would be awesome if they had them, but they don't have to. I did say it was a sketch, so. Okay, the next one, number 3, vertical asymptotes. These 3 things, this and this and this, are either asymptotes or holes. Well, the 6s are the ones that are holes, so the other one's an asymptote. X equals -7 is their vertical asymptote. That's 1 point. Number 4, the horizontals. Who tells you about the horizontals? Bob. And is this a Bob? Yes, it is. So it's y equals 0 unless there's something on the outside. Is there anything on the outside of it? No, so it's y equals 0. If they just have a 0, mark it wrong. They need the emphasis to know that that's not okay. You have to say x equals 0 or y equals 0. I've been trying to pound it into your head that the verticals are x's by saying vertical asymptotes and horizontal, as in y for the horizontals, because you need those x and y's. Next is the hole. The holes on the graph, I even forgot to put holes in the graph. We'll have to go back and look at that again, because there's holes in the graph. Okay, the holes are where? They're at 6 and -6. So here's how I make the hole. 6 comma something and -6 comma something. And now I'm going to plug that into the resulting function. That 6 here goes into that. So it's 1 over 6 plus 7, which is 1 over 13. And the other, the -6 goes in there. And then when the -6 gets put in here, -6, that makes 1 over 1, which is 1. So only give them the full point for the holes if they're both perfect. If one of them's right, one of them's wrong, give them half a point. Now question, I had a hand raised. Yes? Yep. Yes, if you graphed it right. Sometimes you won't have a graph either. So you need to know the rules for Bob, Sob, and Bot so that if you don't have a graph, because sometimes we make ones that are so complicated that you won't be able to graph them. But you can still use those rules of bigger on top, bigger on bottom, or same on both to know where the asymptote is even without the graph. All right, last thought. We're supposed to have holes in this thing, and they're at 6, 1/13. That means, I know a lot of people didn't do this, so I'll just not mark it wrong this time, but you'd have to move it way over there to get to where the hole would be. The hole would be at x equals 6, and the other hole is at -6, 1. That's actually right there on my graph. So I won't mark down for holes this time, but it would be on the test. You'd lose half. But I even forgot right now, so. That's -6. Okay, you're right. Thank you. You're right. That wasn't the right spot. I should have labeled my, no, this is the downside of not labeling. If I go, you're right, 6, 1 would be right there. Sorry about that. So anyway, don't mark wrong for the holes this time, though on the test you would be marked wrong for them. Any other questions? Okay, give them a score out of 5 and then head back to your desk. Now, I don't want you to have to say your own score out loud. So don't tell me your score, but for the person you graded. How many of you graded a 5 out of 5? Raise your hand if you did. How many of you graded a 4.5 or a 4 out of 5? Okay, how many graded a 3 or a 3.5? How many of you graded a 2 or a 2.5? How many graded a 1 or a 1.5? Okay, so most of you were in that 5 and 4 range. That's great. Okay, that's the stuff that you need to know for tomorrow. That's not everything, but that's a lot of it. One more thing that we talked about, I want to make sure you know how to do. If I give you an equation like this, and let's say this is at 3 right there. Let's make it 4 because my marks will fit better. So that's at 4, okay? And let's say there's a hole on it over here at where x is like 7. How do you write an equation for that? One of your quizzes that you're taking today, one of your Schoology quizzes, is going to ask you to write this, and I want to go through how to write this out and type it into Schoology Write. First of all, do you get that you don't really need the hole to start this? You need the whole line. And the equation for that is y equals 4. Are you with me so far? That doesn't have the hole. It's just a y equals 4. Now to put in the hole, you'd go like this. And then the hole I need to put, I'm going to move this over now, see the hole. X is 7 there. So I put a 7 in here. But this is not like the point something comma something. This is an x minus 7. And if there's an x minus 7, so that positive 7 would make it 0, then there's an x minus 7 on the top. And so then your answer is, the way they're going to have you put it in, is they're going to say the top part is A. Put that in the blank. In Schoology, you're going to type in the top part in the A part, and the bottom part they're going to call the B part, and they're going to say type in the bottom part in B. Okay? So now, let's say that you typed this in and you forgot to put in the parentheses around the x minus 7 on the bottom. Does it really even have to have parentheses? Well, Schoology marks it wrong. If you don't have the parentheses, is it really wrong? Not really. If that kind of thing happens, bring it up to me, and I'll actually type the new answer in on Schoology as an accepted answer. And as soon as I hit enter or save, then you can refresh your score and it'll fix your score. Okay, so if something weird like that happens during the Schoology quiz where you really deserved credit, I'll fix it for you. Last thought. Remember, if it's an asymptote and you just say 5, it is going to mark it wrong, and it should mark it wrong, because you got to say, is it an x equals 5 or is it a y equals 5? All right, your 2 Schoology quizzes that I want you to take today are in here under rational functions and Schoology quizzes. And there's 1, 2, and 3. We can skip 1. I think those are too easy for you. So do quizzes 2 and 3. Schoology quiz 2 and 3. You're going to finish those up. Literally, I would think it would take you 13 minutes to get those done, because it is 13 questions total. It's not that hard. Maybe a little longer, maybe 20 minutes at the most. Your assignment then is not the Schoology quizzes. That's just an in-class practice. Your assignment is a regular worksheet in Schoology that's assigned for today's date, which is March 13th. Okay, so these 2 Schoology quizzes, Do them right now. One last thing on those. You can ask me questions during this particular time. If you want to come up and ask questions during the Schoology quiz, you may. I'm not going to tell you answers, but I can at least get you started on questions. All right, that's all I have for the video for today.